What's the story, YouTube? This is Heritage and this is my Terminator Dark Fate review. Yeah, for some reason I was convinced this was going to have a worldwide same day release date, so I didn't actually know it's not going to be out in America till the 1st of November, but we got it yesterday and I didn't see it then because the only screens open were really bad, so I ended up going to see it today. As per usual, I'll give you the preamble, non-spoiler review of what I think of it, and then once the picture changes in the video, you know I'm onto the spoiler section, so if you're just watching it, you know the story is then. It's kind of a mixed bag. I didn't hate it. I want to say that straight off the bat. I didn't hate it. In fact, I really enjoyed it. But it's not like the other Terminator films. It's got a hell of a lot more heart to it than if you think of like Rise of the Machines or Salvation or Genesis even. They're far more blockbuster orientated, much more flashy. Because one of the things that stood out to me was there wasn't really a lot of set pieces. You know, like we usually have some great big, action spectacular going on. Now, don't get me wrong, Tim Miller does some great action in this, but it just doesn't feel like those other films. So, in a way, like what I actually kind of appreciated was if you didn't see anything beyond Terminator 2 and you just saw this would slot straight in the same kind of the vein of seriousness as Terminator 1 and 2. Now, nowhere near as good as them, don't get me wrong. I don't want to overblow it too much, but it was actually surprising to me how effective some of the emotional parts were in this, particularly among Sarah Connor. And indeed, Arnie's Terminator character, he's actually very sympathetic, which surprised me. So all in all, I'd give it, say, about a 6.5 to 7. A very low 7, but 6.5 at least. Now, like I said, it's not bad, but it's not great either. So it is enjoyable. There's a lot of stuff going on it that's really interesting. It's just unfortunate that there is a hell of a lot of wokeness on it. All of those who are a bit worried that it's going to go down the kind of like the Captain Marvel, Ghostbusters 2016, Men in Black, X-Men, Dark Phoenix type stuff where they just out of the blue and, inject random political stuff that just completely throws you. It's not as bad as those films, but it tends to be more persistent. There's an awful lot of, the bad part of it is just, like I said, it's the political stuff that just seems to be in from all the blockbusters this year. So like blokes are portrayed as idiots, bad guys are usually white. Though the main protagonist in this one, Danny, isn't a Mary Sue, it is still kind of girls badass type stuff. And there does seem to be a massive hard-on in Hollywood for some reason to beat the hell out of cops and ICE people. ICE, I mean the Border Patrol lads. But if you put a filter over all that and just forget about it and just take it for the actual story that's there, the character piece, and that's what actually surprising. They actually feel like characters. You have them reflecting on stuff that's happened to them. And I mean, that was really enjoyable. It said like the emotional bit with Sarah Connor, with Carl, who is Schwarzenegger's character, Danny, it kind of redeemed itself on that front. But it is undeniable that if you're kind of sensitive to all these, attacks on, patriarchy and stuff like this now, it's unavoidable in this. You can't help but see it, But like I said, if you can put all that aside and actually just watch it as a film, it's very entertaining, it's enjoyable. There's some great laughs in it. It's actually one or two, one-liners in it. And there's actually a very nice twist on Arnie's "I'll be back" line. It's actually had a nice heartfelt twist to it. But yeah, that's what I said. I'd give it a 6.5, maybe a 7, depending on the mood you're in. It is a popcorn chomper, but not as action-packed as I thought it was going to be. It focuses much more, as I said, on the characters involved and their storylines. And I'm still kind of digesting it, to be honest with you, to try and figure out if I really liked it or not. Like I said, I can't fault the cinematography. It's lovely. The music, the score, that's all well suited with it. There's nice uses of the traditional Terminator theme. It does look a bit cheap on the CGI front. I got to give it that. There's certain bits, you've seen it in the trailer, the bit where the Terminators are coming out of the sea. That was actually supposed to reflect an alternate future, and so maybe they were trying to illustrate that it didn't really happen or something, I don't know. But I mean, it just looked to me like it wasn't quite polished enough, not quite real. So that kind of distracted me a little bit. But I do got to admit, like the effects with the new Terminator, where it kind of splits into two and all that, is really good. And it's the guy who plays him is fantastic. unfortunately can't remember his name because it like became, I left before the cast credits came up and all that. They were just giving the names and they didn't say who they played. But he's really good. He actually reminded me of Robert Patrick in the sense that he could be creepy and intimidating, but also charming and personable, which, like, when he was playing the role of somebody else or trying to ingratiate himself with people he was meeting, worked really effectively. And it was, I do have to commend them on that front. Like, all the main cast have great charisma. Like Grace, who is the basically the bionic woman. She's the new Kyle Reese type character that's coming back to protect Danny. She's not a Mary Sue. Like, I mean, she is tough, she is powerful, don't get me wrong, but she has a flaw and she has a constant need for certain kind of supplements and stuff in order to keep her going. And she get the crap kicked out of her a fair few times. So it is actually great to see that they didn't fall into the Captain Marvel trap of making her an unbeatable badass. So there's a nice balance of kind of actual threat between the protagonist and the antagonist, where you actually think, well, maybe he'll take her out, maybe, it'll come down to Sarah or Danny to actually stop the Terminator itself. But so I mean, like, there's stuff like that I really enjoyed, so I can't fault them for that. And the story is actually fairly interesting. Like, it could work as a reboot, but it's competent enough. Now, would I say you'd pay full whack in the cinema? I don't know about that. I'd say maybe a matinee, if you can get it on a cheaper price, or maybe wait a while, but it's a good addition. Yeah, like I said, I think it's better than Salvation. I think it's better than Genesis. I think it's better than Rise of the Machines. I think it's actually quite a good accomplished film. But as I said, when you're comparing them to like Terminator 2 or to Terminator 1, not in the same league. So like I said, that's my non-spoiler review there. It's I think it's entertainment enough. If you're a Terminator fan, I think you'll probably like this. It's not brainless, which is actually quite nice. As I said, it's got a great bit of heart to it, which I wasn't expecting. And the story's pretty good. The effects hold up, like I said, a bit ropey in places, but I think that's because they were going to concentrate more on certain sequences, mainly involving the new Terminator, because I presume that wasn't cheap to do all those effects in terms of when he's splitting into different components. And I know 6.5 sounds like a bit of a low score, but 5 is meh and 1 is bleh, absolutely awful. So it's still better than average, so. And considering the last while there hasn't really been anything out, I think you'd be all right going and see it with your mates. You will enjoy it. Okay, so there you go. That's the non-spoiler review over, and I get into the spoiler review section now. Okay, like I said, the worst stuff is all the egregious political stuff that they kind of layer over it as a filter. If you can ignore that, it's actually really entertaining. And, the way the film opens is basically a lovely homage to Terminator 2. It's basically Sarah Connor's psych evaluation sequence done on, through actually seen through a television camera. So she's talking about Judgment Day, and it then leads into the revelation that Judgment Day didn't happen, like I said, but she's on, I think she's somewhere in South America or somewhere with John Connor, and she's just basically enjoying the fact that John's having a life. He's chatting up a girl in this little bar down by the beach, and Sarah's just looking lovingly at him, when suddenly out of the blue, on comes Arnie and blows him away. So John Connor is dead. He's actually gone in this film. But the thing is, because it's past Judgment Day, Skynet still doesn't seem to be a thing, which does kind of leave you with the paradox. You're wondering where this Terminator came from. Because if you look at Genesis, only one of them went back, so presume you're disregarding everything since Terminator 2. But if you focus on that stuff, you're never going to get through these types of films. So you just see the fact that Arnie's character has succeeded in the mission and killed John, and then just walks off. If you remember correctly, this whole scene actually starts off with the scene with the Terminators walking out of the sea. And they're walking up to kill this little girl on the beach. But then it's kind of like a series of flashes, and suddenly it's a normal beach because this is our reality. I think this is set in 1998, which Judgment Day should have happened. It hasn't, so this is the new future where everything's, hunky-dory, apparently. And like I said, it plays out then where John gets blown away. Sarah then dedicates herself to tracking down Terminators, whenever they pop up. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. This is then when you see Grace come back from the future, and she's the bionic woman. Basically, she's as they used to jokingly refer to the LGBT 2000, but she's not that bad of a character. As I said, actually survived me. They didn't marry Sarah at all. Some nice, interesting bits they were doing with the time travel device, where they introduced this thing where it was kind of freezing everything around it. And when she kind of materializes halfway through a bridge, falls underneath it, and is found by I think a Mexican couple. She's bollocks naked. They try to bring her back up and help, and that's when they're stopped by the cops. And the cops assume she's on drugs or something like that. And she basically, when she fully recovers, smacks the hell out of the cops, steals the clothes of the guy who is after helping her, and then sods off looking for Danny. Danny is kind of like the de facto matriarch of her family. Like she's assisting her brother, who I think wants to be a YouTube musician or something like that. Or he thought about wanting to compete with Bruno Mars anyway, or something like that. So maybe he's gone on television. She looks after the father, and they both go off and work in. The son goes off and works in a car factory where Danny works as well. And there's kind of a sly plot here, decide where they're saying they're being replaced by machines, because when they come into the factory, they realise there's a machine there now doing Danny's brother's job. So he's supposed to go up to the boss, presumably to get sacked, but Danny goes instead and gets in a big fight with him, and white guy, so villain. But sorry, I just keep laughing at that. There's some of the political stuff in this. You could really do a parody of this so easily, but I'm trying to play it straight. It's around this time that the Terminator from the future comes back and tries to track down Danny, and he then makes his way to the factory, and that's where the first kind of combat scene breaks out between him and Grace. Basically, the first half hour of this film is pretty much everything you've seen in the trailers, bar the big set piece with the two C5 airplanes, the big refueling things. Bar them, they come later on. Like pretty much everything you've seen in the trailers is in the first half hour of the film, and that's actually really good, because it does allow you to not end up being spoiled by marketing. There's a lot of this stuff that you haven't seen, so it's really enjoyable in that regard. And I will credit Tim Miller with some really creative directive in terms of the fight and the combat thing that happens, on the between the fight in the factory and by the time they get to the freeway in Mexico. Which, as I said, this is when Sarah turns up, and then she, gets introduced to Grace and Danny. Linda Hamilton is one of the best things in this, because she basically turned into a female version of Clint Eastwood. She's just grizzled and pissed off and sardonic all the time. I think she's kind of accepted her life. She's just going to be like this now, and it's how she's handled it. And there was some lovely creative flourishes here, because Grace gets really banged up in the fight on the freeway, which actually ends up with her being knocked unconscious. And that's actually used as a device to do a flashback, where you see her future, where the machines are exterminating humanity, and she's a soldier with them. And she actually volunteers for this process where they're upgraded to the condition they're in. Now, it does get a little bit confusing, because you're kind of wondering where this AI got a time travel device in order to come back and basically do what Skynet did. Because we're not dealing with Skynet. What the villain here is an AI called Legion. And this leads to confusion with Sarah and Grace, because Grace has no idea what Skynet is or what anything Sarah is talking about, and isn't completely sure if she trusts her. Sarah's excuse for how she managed to end up on the freeway was that she keeps getting text messages from an unknown benefactor that lets her know where Terminators are going to appear, and she just basically turns up and takes them out. And there's a bit of a convoluted techno bit going on, where we find out that by hacking Sarah's phone, she can trace where these text messages have come from using future tech. Grace does this, and it turns out that there's a series of coordinates tattooed onto Grace's stomach that exactly match that address, so she's going there anyway. So this ends up with a bit of a road trip where they have to get to the US in order to find out who's sending her the information. Now, this is the bit where they end up in the ICE facility, and you start, as I said, a bit more of the political stuff, where they're just basically trying to lay on thick about immigration and all that sort of stuff. But like I said, apply the filter and just go with the film. It's actually a really good action sequence in there. As I was saying about the new Terminator guy being charismatic, this is actually where it works, because he's really good at passing himself off as an ICE agent and just like a fellow co-worker with the other people, until he obviously turns and just kills them all. And like I said, his presence and the other characters, it's one of the really good things about this film. Like, it is well acted. There is a great sense to it, and everybody seems to be actually taking it seriously. Anyway, once they get out of this, they track the coordinates down to where obviously they want to get to, and that turned out to be Arnold Schwarzenegger's character, who turns out he's a person called Carl now, who's a drapier, you know, like does curtains and all this sort of stuff for housing. And he's basically been living a normal life for the last 20 years. As we know, Skynet is gone now, so he's effectively been set free. And because the Terminators were learning machines, and, you know, in order to blend into society, he actually ends up having a family. You know, he's not the father of the child at all. So if you want, you could say there's kind of a cooking exercise here going on. But he basically looks after a woman and her child, who I think was being roughed up by the father of the child or something like that. And he basically has taken care of them for the last 10 years or something like that. And he's a good family man. And this is kind of really contrasts in a way if you look at how Sarah's turned out. She's basically a weapon, you know, like having been, you know, a waitress and then a mother and, you know, having to do what she did to become a soldier. And then you see the exact reverse with Schwarzenegger's character. He was a Terminator and now he's basically a decent guy. Now, obviously you can expect Sarah wasn't fucking happy when she seen him. And when she sees all this going on, she just convinced, like, you know, that because he's a Terminator, that he's going to turn on him. So she refuses to call him by his name and is basically saying that as soon as this mission's over, she's going to kill him. But this leads to a nice actually discussion with her and Danny in the woods, where she's basically talking about how she still misses John. Like I said, it was 1998 when he was killed, so it's nearly 10 years. It's over 10 years. And one of the things she laments is that she doesn't have a picture of him. And the reason she didn't take a picture of him was because if nobody knew what he looked like, then nobody could ever get, you know, a copy of a picture of him to give to the Terminators to get him in the future. And, you know, tactically speaking, it's the right thing to do. But, you know, she's lamenting the fact now that at the age she's at, she's forgetting what he looks like, and it's really ripping her up. And it's a lovely moment. Like I said, it's not something I was expecting from this film. And likewise with the Arnold Schwarzenegger character, he ends up, because he knew, you know, someday something like this would happen. Oh, by the way, it turns out he's the one, as I said, that's feeding the information to Sarah, because he wants to give her purpose. He knows that she's basically lost everything when she lost John. She knows that she's, you know, aimless and, you know, like she's a wanted criminal, you know, in the United States. So he's basically trying to give her purpose. You know, like, so she kind of resents that, obviously, you know, when she finds out. But I mean, it does show that he actually cares after a fashion. And he basically told the family he's with that one day something like this is going to happen and they're going to have to leave, because if they don't, he's going to die, or they're going to die. Like I said, this is one of the things I wasn't expecting. Arnold Schwarzenegger's Terminator turns out to be really human and relatable and quite a sympathetic character. But like I said, this is kind of the exposition period as well, where we find out, you know, that what's going on here with Legion is that Legion basically wants to kill Danny because she's essentially the new John Connor. She's going to be the one who's going to lead the resistance down the road. And she actually saved Grace when she was a child. So one of the reasons she volunteered for the process was to go try and help her and pay her back for all the things that she's done for her. We also find out at this stage that pretty much most normal weapons can't take out the Terminator, so they're going to need something like an EMP or an energy weapon in order to do so. So Sarah has a contact in the military where she can actually get one of them, and they all go off to try and pick up the weapon. Like, this is the bit that leads into the scene with the C-5 aircraft carrier. Not, you know, the big airplane. This is probably the biggest set piece in the whole thing, because there's an awful lot of kind of zero-G fighting, for want of a better term, because the airplane is in free fall as it's falling apart. And the whole idea of this part is try and get into a Humvee that has a parachute on it so they can get out the back in order to save their lives. And Ernie's trying to take out the T2, so Sarah. And Grace is just trying to save Danny. Like I said, the great thing about Grace, though, is she's not a Mary Sue. She has to continually take these injections of a cocktail of drugs, and just in order to keep herself functioning, because the strain for the bionics that are in her are basically wiping her out. Like, so she has brief periods where she can actually go toe to toe with the Terminator, but she can't keep it up. So I actually did appreciate that it wasn't, you know, as I said, didn't fall afoul of the Captain Marvel effect, where basically nothing mattered because she was just basically badass and indestructible, and as such had no stakes whatsoever. There's plenty of times in this where she's crashing, she's not able to do the deed, and you're wondering, is it going to come down between her and Arnie's character to try and actually take out the Terminator in the end? This, as I said, when the C-5 plane crashes, it ends up in a battle at, I think, a hydroelectric facility. It's a dam of some sort anyway, and they end up in there where they decide to have the final showdown against it, because they just basically can't run anymore. And there's actually some lovely combat sequences in this part where they all actually work together, simultaneously trying to distract and attack the new Terminator. And like I said, the fact that it can kind of split off into two different sections is used quite well. I love the way that actually kind of melds into each other as well at times. I was actually kind of half expecting it to try and take over Arnold's character at one stage, just like what happened in T3 with the Terminatrix. But that doesn't happen in this. It just ends up in a knockdown, drag-out brawl. And like I said, I wasn't expecting this. Grace dies. She says that the actual only thing that can take out the Terminator at this stage is her power core. But if she takes her power core out, she'll die. Now, Danny obviously doesn't want to do this, because, she basically laid down her life to save her. But she said, look, it has to be done. And I got to give them fair play in the script. She actually does tear it out. Grace does die. And it basically comes down to Danny, Arnold's, Schwarzenegger's Terminator, and Sarah all attacking the new Terminator. The end result of which is that Danny ends up jamming the power core into the Terminator's head, and then Arnold Schwarzenegger's character basically grabs him and dives off into I think it's some sort of hydro generator or something, and he basically keeps him down there until the whole thing explodes and takes them both out. There's actually parallels in that bit with Terminator 2, where John has to lower him into the molten metal in order to get rid of the last chip. I almost thought he was going to do the thumbs up thing, but he didn't. They weren't that cheesy. But that's it. The Terminator failed in his mission to kill Danny. The film ends with Danny and Sarah looking at the young Grace playing on the playground. Now, never to become a warrior, because the future that's supposed to happen doesn't appear to have happened. And they end up driving off in a Jeep together, to the tune of the music. So I'm not quite sure where they're going to go with a sequel. Just like Terminator 1, there was no real suggestion of where Legion came from, what company produced it, or even how it was actually, how it's constructed. Like I said, there's no central node or anything with the sound thing. It could be just software, we don't know. But that's the way it ends. And yeah, it's enjoyable enough. Like I said, it's not the best film, but I think it's probably the best of the sequels after T2. 6.5 to 7. It's enjoyable. I realise I'm probably sounding a lot less enthused than I actually am. Like, I don't really want to undersell it. It's actually not, as I said, I really enjoyed it for what it was. It was funnier than I thought it was going to be. It looked great, in the main, where it needed to be. The story was good. It had a lot more heart than I was expecting it to have at all. And I have to admit, that's just that was the big shock for me, is to realise just how soulless all the other ones were. You didn't really take to those characters, where you look what happened with Danny at the loss of her family and her brother. You look at Grace and Sarah and Carl, the Terminator and themselves in particular. You realise just how much life has beaten these people up. And, it feels a lot more real in that regard, at least in terms of the emotional resonance of it. So I think I got to give it, props for that. Like I said, what ruins it a lot is there is a lot that woke stuff in there. I mean, that's going to annoy a lot of people. As an Irishman, I'm not exposed to all this nonsense on a daily basis like you guys are in the States. So, it doesn't really, it's not as egregious to me. But I can understand if you're living in America now and you're just sick to the back teeth of this stuff, and you start getting all these kind of sly messages thrown at you, it's probably going to annoy you. But like I said, apply a filter. Just actually look at it as a story as it is. It's actually really well done, I have to admit, and I enjoyed it. So there you go. That's my review for Terminator Dark Fate. It'll be out for you guys in the States on the 1st of November, which is next Friday. And let me know what you think about it yourself, if you think you managed to sideline all that stuff that would annoy you, and just see what you thought of the film itself. Okay, guys, take care. If you like this video, like and subscribe. Leave a comment below if you feel you want to tell me what you think about the film. And take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.